Welcome. I'm a little late. Uh, I just got out the shower. It's very hot here in Detroit, so I figured I'd try to cool down a little bit before I started this thing. Welcome everyone to Three Count Commentaries. AJ3, good evening, sir. How are you? Well, or madam, I don't know. How are you guys doing? Tonight is going to be busy. We got four subjects, each of whom follows one of the things that I truly enjoy talking about. We got a movie, a TV show, a manga, and an anime to talk about. The movie, of course, is TMNT Mutant Mayhem from 2023, which we'll be doing a review of momentarily. The second will be Power Rangers Time Force, which I watched the entire 40 episode series. It is from 2001. So we're going to spend some time talking about that. Then we're going to talk about the anime 91 Days. I don't remember what year it came out, but it's a solid, I believe, 12 episode anime. And we will be talking about Hell's Paradise, the manga series, which I completed. I just started the anime today, but we're going to be talking about the manga series because I read all 13 volumes. So we got a lot on the docket today. And hopefully we can get this thing done in 2 hours. Um, Gold Prince Ali with the glow up. I appreciate it. I see ya. WG Phil, the Power Rangers guy on the channel. AJ3 asked me, did I see Blue Beetle? I did not, and I probably will not. I don't like Blue Beetle. This doesn't seem like a character I'd be all that interested in, if we're being honest. Lights thought that TMNT was a movie that was edgier than he expected it to be. Let's talk about TMNT because I started late. Oh, Hell's Paradise is dope. He doesn't want to be spoiled. Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. Okay, so I'm guessing you mean are you reading the manga or watching the anime? Because I haven't seen all of the anime yet, but I would imagine it's the same story. Now, uh, let me know how far you got, and I will stop there. Am I following the destruction of Logan Paul? I have been watching whoever that guy is talk about Logan Paul's fiance and how she's a whore, but it's been interesting. It's been very interesting to watch, but I'm not following it that closely. It just ends up on my timeline a lot because I haven't blocked or got found a way to get away from these people. Gold Prince Ali says he finished watching Fight Club, now having trouble. What my number one film is besides American Psycho. Oh, okay. Uh, I haven't even gotten to episode 12 of the anime yet. I'm only on episode 3, but I've read the entire series, so I know the finish. I'll basically give everybody the basic rundown of the series without spoiling it too much. I don't know how many episodes is in the anime, if we're being honest. It seemed like it was going to be a short one, um, but we'll talk about it. In terms of Fight Club or American Psycho, I had a similar issue. It was a toss up for me, but I believe probably I'm more in the Fight Club um, piece. I'm more in the Fight Club area. Oh, the anime is 12 episodes only? Oh, oh well. You know most of the story then at that point. You know most of it. Unless that was just like the first season. Is it like gonna be like a second season? I don't know how quickly the thing moves. So far, it's looking like each anime is just I mean, each episode is a chapter of the manga from what it looks like. At least that's what it looks like, but I'm not sure. Like where I got seems to be still in the first volume of the chapter of the book, I mean, of the series. And I got 3 episodes in. I don't think we have moved into the second volume yet. But then again, I read the one and second, first and second volumes months ago. Second season has not been announced yet. Oh boy. Well, we'll see how far it is, and then I'll tell you uh, what's whether a second season is even necessary because the manga is not that long. It's 13 volume manga. It's not that long. It's probably be a season and a half, but it depends because I don't know if they added filler or not. But let's get into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Let's talk about that first. All right. Um, Overall, it is mid. The movie is wild mid. Uh, I watched it expecting to absolutely hate it because I had heard such negativity about it. And then I watched the Old Turtle Den, which is a YouTube channel dedicated to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And because he's a fanboy, he liked the movie. He thought it was pretty good. He basically, even though I knew the movie going in, of course it was kind of spoiled. I watched it anyway, and his review got me to watch it, and it was mid. It was super mid. I'll tell you what my chief number one issue with the movie is. It's the lack of action. That's for starters. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is an action series. Literally, ninja is in the title, and when they're not doing any ninja-ing, you're already off track. So that was my number one issue. My number two issue was the dialogue, the constant pop culture references. Ice Cube's character, Superfly, is speaking in song lyrics. It is absolutely annoying, especially all the 90s music that they used too, which really dated the show. Dated the movie, which felt to me like they were trying to do that. Like they really wanted to uh, put the Turtles in the late 80s, early 90s. Um, my third issue was April. Not that April was fat, black, and ugly, but that April is a teenager like the Turtles. That to me is not appropriate. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles need older characters that they can interact with. And April is one of those characters. Sometimes she plays a motherly role, sometimes she's a partner, sometimes she's just a friend, sometimes she's just someone that the boys can lean on and depend on and can appreciate. She's their link to the human world. She's still the link to the human world in this series, but in recent years, people have just forgotten that April is not a part of the team. She's a part of the team in so much as she's always there, but she's not a turtle. She's not a part of the action. I think one of the most recent ones, which was Rise of the TMNT, was that they put her in a combat situation where she's actually fighting alongside them and stuff like that. And I don't like that. It betrays April's role of what her role is in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it diminishes the boys. You know, um, I didn't really care for Splinter. Um, Jackie Chan was fine as Splinter. The problem was the characterization. Splinter, of course, being a disciplinarian, being the old wise man. He's the old wise father. He's always there with kind words and philosophy and all these things to keep the boys focused, keep them from allowing themselves to get too playful, get too loose. And they gave that away in this movie. Now Splinter is basically an overbearing mom, you know, doesn't want his babies to ever leave the nest. He's a bigot. He hates humans, which gives us a silly X-Men storyline where Superfly also hates humans. So he's more the Magneto. I'm gonna turn them all into mutants. Therefore, they'll all be like us, or they'll die, or some nonsense. And Splinter is like, oh well, I don't like the humans, but I don't want to kill them, nor do I want to turn them into mutants. I don't want to be as just like they are. You know, the moral high ground doesn't work if you are insufferable. And that's one thing I want people to recognize when they're talking about characters is if the characters are insufferable, you'd have no moral high ground. Splinter saying we're no better than them when the humans didn't really do much except for look at crazy things like talking turtles and standing spite rats as being odd. because they are. It's like the X-Men have to know that they're not normal, you know, and recognizing that is part of healing. If you recognize how different you are from other people and you can get them to understand you, then you're on the path to healing. No, not everybody's going to appreciate you. And that's what this movie is about, is how the turtles can gain appreciation from the human world. But you don't get that. And but the crazy thing is, let me back up for a bit, is that gaining appreciation from the human world didn't come from Splinter. It came from the boys. So it's another one of those situations where the children know better than the adults. You know, even though Splinter was proven right, they did this silly running gag throughout the movie where Splinter was talking about the humans milking them, and there was jokes about, oh, we don't even have nipples. How can they milk us? Only for them to get captured, and the ooze was being drained from their bodies. Therefore, they were being milked. And you get the idea that, okay, well, Splinter was right. You know, the humans are evil and they're trying to capture and milk the turtles. But ultimately, the boys ended up being right, you know. And I'm okay with sometimes the kids being right, but like I said, the sort of culturally Marxist storytelling, or the postmodern storytelling, more like, is that the children know better than the adults. And I talked about this when it came to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, where you had Miles Morales basically lecturing Miguel about, you know, how how to affect time and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, you know, kids not really understanding their place, not understanding they don't have all the information, not understanding that people who have other experiences might know something they don't know. And I hate know-it-all kids. I really do. And these movies now are obsessed with know-it-all children. And they tried to. It didn't make TMNT completely know-it-alls, but they wanted to try something different and it ended up working. So I'm willing to kind of give it a pass. I just wanted to let everybody know that when you start seeing this stuff in television, the adults are being undermined by children. It's a similar thing that they had tried to produce in the real world, where, you know, they indoctrinate children. So now children are the smart ones, the adults are the idiots, and they don't know any better. Or you're an old bigot, or you're an old hater, or you're living in the past, or whatever the case may be. And the children are the future, and the children are always right. It's like that's not the case, which is why I don't like the characterization of Splinter. Splinter should, if he was the Splinter that he should be, he would understand that yes, the humans are dangerous but they also are not used to talking rats and giant talking turtles. That would be something that would freak anybody out. If you've never experienced it, why in the world would you suddenly be okay with a giant talking turtle? You know, it literally doesn't make any sense. But I didn't like the characterization of Splinter. I really hated it. Um, it was not fun. The attack in Splinter has been something that has happened in the last iteration, the rise of the TMNT, where I think Splinter was like a fat, lazy, out of shape kind of guy. And I was like, I don't like this. I don't like when they start toying with the characters, because once you start messing with the ancillary characters, you end up messing with the boys eventually. And because each character has a role to play, they help the turtles in one way or another. And goes with any story, is that the characters play a certain role in the story. And that character's role, if it must be played, it must be played by that character, or that character should be killed off and replaced with another one. And they didn't do that. Since you didn't kill Splinter and replace him with somebody else, the boys need to have a fatherly role. They need to have a disciplinarian, a role model. Um, Splinter is not that in the movie. He is also not that in the most recent cartoon series. Splinter is not. He is not a martial artist. He is a guy who watched Taibo videos and taught his boys Taibo from watching kung fu movies. To me, that is incredibly lazy, and it doesn't explain how the boys can be any good with these weapons that they have. And one part of the movie is that the boys are trying to stop a robbery or something like that, and they're ninjas, but they've never been in a fight. So now all of them are like, "What do we do?" So it's like, "Oh, we have these memories of the kung fu movies and all this kind of stuff. So let's just do this," and it ends up working out for them. And it's like you can write the movie that way, but in reality, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they're child soldiers. These guys were grew up in a very strict, disciplined system, a hierarchy where they butt heads based on the hierarchy, which is usually the Raph Leonardo situation where Raph wants to do his own thing, and Leo, is like, no, he must do what Splinter says, and then it ends up butting heads over that, and then you end up learning that Raph was wrong because he's hot-headed and ill-tempered, and he can't just do everything on his own. That's a staple and a trope in TMNT, and it happens pretty much everywhere. Is that Raphael gets upset, he gets pissed off about something, he's gonna go off and handle it on his own, and then he ends up in bigger trouble than if he needs to listen to Leonardo or listen to Splinter or whatever. And it actually makes perfect sense if you look at The Last Ronin. I don't know how many of you have read The Last Ronin, but it happens there too. Splinter is believed to be dead. Raphael gets extremely upset. He decides to storm off on his own, and he ends up getting killed because he decided he was going to fight the entire Foot Clan by himself. And that's a regular Raphael personality trait. You didn't get that in this movie because Raph is he's sort of the Flash Thompson character in this movie. He doesn't butt heads with Leonardo a lot. As much as matter of fact, he's not the Flash Thompson, he's more like the Nelson Muntz. He calls his brothers losers, he picks on them a little bit. But there's no butting of heads between him and Leonardo. And I'm fine with you wanting to make their relationship a little bit more mellow, where they can disagree without it getting as far as it usually gets in TMNT. So I'm cool with that. But again, this is where if you had a strong Splinter, you could then have a strong Leonardo, to which you can set up Raphael to be the sort of the rebellious one, and things fall in line from there. But now a lot of them felt kind of the same, where they were all in on the same jokes together. They laughed and bounced off of each other very well. So it was good characterization for characters that are supposed to be brothers. You know, like they generally liked being around each other. They generally had fun together. And you can see that in the movie. And that's one of the things that if you were looking at the characterization of the boys, that works. You know, they have fun together, they laugh, they joke, they eat pizza, they're throwing ninja stars at each other's heads and, teenage boy stuff. Yeah, they really do feel like teenagers in the movie. But that's also the negative, is because they needed to have that disciplinarian, and you didn't get that. You needed to have that. You can have the rambunctious teenage boys, especially when it comes to Mikey and Raph, who are going to basically fly off and do their own thing, or you know, but you need to have Leonardo be sort of the stick in the mud. That this is what Splinter says, this is what Splinter wants us to do, and then they could be like, no way, man, we're gonna do this, yada yada yada, and then that individualizes the characters a lot more. Here, Leonardo was the leader kind of by default, but he was also kind of stupid, but he's also the kind of the front man, like he was the spokesman for the team, but he was sort of the leader, as in they agreed that he was the leader. Not that he had leadership qualities that the others didn't have, and he was able to show that throughout the story. Now, I do think that maybe at one point when I think Leonardo, I'm trying to remember the movie off the top of my head because I didn't write this part down. I think he was the one who actually led the mutant rebellion against Superfly, where he says he really didn't want to fight them and all that kind of stuff. Um, okay, that that's fine, but I just didn't like the characterization of these guys not being action based. You know, them fighting uh, villains and martial arts and all that kind of stuff. It was just lacking in that regard. And when you don't have a strong Splinter, you weaken Leonardo and then you weaken the team. So you need to have strong male character at the top. You need to have a father. They had a weak father. And even though Splinter did kind of participate when it comes to martial arts and stuff like that, he ended up saving the boys later on. So he got to shine a little bit, but he was still sort of a weak dad, you know, and I wasn't feeling that. It feels very modern, and it doesn't feel like something that Splinter would be. But you also get the idea that this version of Splinter is a completely different character. This is not Hamato Yoshi Splinter, you know. So it's uh, it's just it's a rat that adopted some turtles. That's what it is, and that takes from so you don't get the spiritual element of the TMNT. You don't get the war with the Foot Clan. That's not in here. I think Shredder is teased at the end, but so the main villain of TMNT is not really featured or centered on in this movie. Um, so I'm bothered by that quite a bit. Um, I mean, I'm okay with the Shredder and all these kind of characters. Um, they have been explored to death. The Shredder is the number one villain, and when you go into a Teenage Mutant Turtle media and you have a different villain, okay, that's fresh. That's something new. They went with Baxter Stockman, but then Baxter Stockman, quote unquote, dies, and now Superfly exists. But Superfly is not Baxter Stockman, which is what you would think, because Baxter Stockman becomes a fly in the comics. And anytime anyone, when you see Baxter Stockman's been mutated, he becomes a fly. So why is Baxter Stockman and Superfly two different people? I don't know why that would be. Um, Bebop and Rocksteady are in the movie, but they're not Foot Clan soldiers. They're just mutants, along with Mondo Gecko, and they of course become friends with the turtles later. I don't know. It's it feels like it would have been more fun if they were straight up villains. Bebop and Rocksteady are very fun guys, man. They're fun characters. I remember having them as action figures and stuff. But I didn't really like the characterization of them in the movie. So there's a lot of ups and downs with this thing. The villains kind of suck. They're just TCRI as the villains. Um, eh, it's fine, because they want the secret of the ooze that's in their blood. All right, that's fine if you want to do that. But um, one of the characters is named Ultron, so they're teasing Krang, and I'm guessing Krang is probably going to end up being, if they make a third movie or something like that, that's probably when they'll introduce Krang and the Ultrons. All right, because it seems like they're going with the Foot Clan in the second movie. All right, but they definitely need more action in this movie. They didn't get enough action, but we did get to see Michelangelo twerk, so there that goes. And the boys like Drake, so come on. It's it's to think that Raphael will be sitting around listening to Drake is kind of ridiculous. I don't care about that. I don't buy that. The X-Men plot, I wasn't a big fan of that. It comes with the territory, I guess, but it would have been better if Superfly was Baxter Stockman. Then it would have been, I think, better, because then you would have had a human who was mutated, and he could base his desire to mutate others as a way of trying to improve them or something to that effect, similar to the Lizard in Spider-Man series. But instead, they went with Magneto. So I don't know. It was dumb. It was a highly mid movie. I'd say about a 6.5. 6.5 maybe out of 10. You know, the boys were very well done, but I couldn't get over April throwing up all over herself because she's got stage fright. Um, the boys end up going to school at the end because now everybody likes them, so now they don't have to live in the shadows anymore. Which again attacks the ninja portion of the Ninja Turtles. And there was an article out there about Seth Rogen about his approach to this movie, and his approach was that he really wanted to lean into the teen part. And I say you have to lean into every part. Every part matters. you know, they can be teenagers. You can have them having fun and eating pizza and joking around and playing around, but they also need to be serious ass kickers when it's time. And I felt like he dropped the ball there because there's almost no action in this movie. And then also, you don't have a strong father figure, you're really gonna fall. This thing is gonna fall apart. WG Phil says, watch gender Casey be gender swapped or gender ambiguous. Watch Casey's probably gonna be another teenager, which again, Casey's supposed to be an adult. Casey is one of the adult characters that is helping the turtles and helping them mature. That's what the part of the adults are for. Adults in children's media need to be, I don't want to say paragons of virtue, but you want to make sure that the adults are adults. You know, the not everybody in the movie could be a teenager or a young person because kids are not really inspired by other young people. They're inspired by adults and people who make tough decisions. And, they look up to their parents. Then they look up to their football coach or the basketball coach or teachers or whatever. They don't really look up to each other. They want to mimic each other because they want to be in the same friend group or whatever. But when it comes to how to make decisions, how to dress, how to how to behave in the world, a role model, they need to have solid adult figures for that. And that's why the Batman Robin relationship always works, is because Batman is a role model for Robin. You know, if Batman and Robin were the same age, how is Batman a role model? He wouldn't be. If Batman was ineffective and ineffectual, a homebody who sat in the house all day watching TV, how would that, you know, inspire Robin to go out and help people and save the world? It wouldn't, you know. The fact that becoming a hero or whatever didn't even come from Splinter. Splinter didn't want them to go out into the world, didn't want them to become heroes. It's very bizarre. It was it was weird. I don't know why they would do that. AJ3 says Anne wasn't there, supposed to be Shredder in the movie. Shredder was at the end. He was sort of teased. I think he's going to be like a mercenary or something like that, hired by TCRI. So they're not going to do the whole Hamato Yoshi storyline, the Foot Clan, the War for the Foot Clan, or anything like that. It's going to end up being very, very weird. I can tell you that right now. It's going to be very, very weird. WG Phil says, why does live action movies never highlight Robin? I think partially because most people like Batman and they want Batman to be sort of stoic and on his own. A lot of the casual audience, they want Batman to be a solo act. It's always better when it's one man versus an entire corrupt city. But the comics readers typically love Robin because Robin makes Batman look cool. Through the eyes of Robin, Batman is one of the coolest guys in the world. He's a solid father figure. He's always prepared. He's a disciplinarian. He helps you out emotionally and physically. He does a lot. He plays a much better role. It's a different side of Batman when Robin is there. I don't necessarily like Robin myself. I think Robin dates Batman, and plus, I typically like Batman to be alone. But I understand why Robin exists. You know, and this is what I mean by characters needing to have roles. For instance, if you make a Sherlock Holmes movie, you got to have Watson. Watson exists for a reason. You know, Watson exists for somebody, meaning us, the audience, the average person, to be dumbfounded, and wow, Sherlock Holmes is a damn genius. I wouldn't have thought of that. And Watson can say that. Watson can be impressed by the genius of Sherlock Holmes. And you are experiencing Sherlock Holmes through the eyes of Watson, and you could say Sherlock Holmes is very cool because Watson thinks that he's cool, and Watson is, hanging out with Sherlock Holmes all the time. Of course, you also learn that Sherlock Holmes is doing like cocaine and opiates and stuff too, but whatever. So if you're reading Batman, and if they're telling the story correctly, you're reading Batman through Robin, and you know the way he speaks to Robin, the way they interact with each other, you know, is showing a different side of Batman. And some people are just not ready and not interested in that side of Batman. They're more interested in the brooding, Dark Knight of Vengeance sort of Batman, and that's kind of me too, you know. Uh, but it's also kind of a question of which Robin. Dick Grayson seems to be the one they go with more often than not. But maybe one day they'll come up with the Damian Robin idea and see how that works. WG Phil says James Gunn is trying to skip all the Robins, going straight to Damian. I love how I'll have low hopes for our Gunn's DCU. You know, um, I don't have a problem with that, except each Robin has his own story, and it Damian becomes a stronger character after Dick becomes an adult and he leaves Nest. After Jason dies, then Damian comes. Well, you had Tim Drake, of course, and Tim Drake kind of grows out of the role. And then you get Damian, who is his actual blood son. So now you have a different situation where, there's been three Robins before him, at least three. And each one of them have gone off into the world as either his own unique hero, or in the case of Jason, he gets killed. And so Batman now has some more experience in being a father figure. So now when his actual son comes in, he's a different man. Um, I think skipping that part and just have him come in as a straight up father, it's fine, but it just seems to me that he didn't want to do the hard work of. But then again, it's also, I don't know what kind of story it intends to tell. Maybe Damien fits the story that maybe he wants to tell a Ra's al Ghul story, and that's going to be the thing that he's going to go into. Is he's going to have Ra's al Ghul, and so he's going to have Damien. You don't need Dick Grayson or Tim Drake for that. And so if you're going to do that angle, so okay, sure. But I would prefer it if they'd have started out with Dick. But it is true that Robin makes Batman old, because if he adopts Dick when Dick is like 10 or 12, and then Dick grows up and he's in college and now he's off being Nightwing. All right, so then how old is Batman? And then you come into contact with Jason, and Jason's a kid, and now he kind of, maybe he's a little slightly older, maybe 13 or 14 or something like that, but he ends up getting killed. And then you get Tim Drake, who's in that same age group, and he grows up because he doesn't die, so he has to grow up. He grows into Red Robin or whatever, and then you start over with Damian. So how the fuck old is Batman? Like, yeah, he's what, 50? So that is an interesting scenario that you create by taking into account all of the Robins. So maybe he's trying to avoid that by saying, let's just do one Robin. And if we're going to do one Robin, let's just do Damien, which I don't have a problem with. If you're going to use any Robin, I guess Damien is a fine one. He's not the Robin from Teen Titans, which is what everybody else kind of likes. He's not the Red Hood, but he has his own angles, his own story, and he could be an interesting character when written correctly. AJ3 says, in your own personal opinion, who is the better storyteller and lyricist, Ice Cube or Notorious B.I.G.? Uh, hmm, that's a good question. I think you can make a strong case for either guy. Uh, I think you can make a really strong case for either guy. I'm gonna go with Biggie, and basically because I like Biggie's style a little bit more. But Ice Cube is no slouch for sure. So AJ3 says Jason Todd was originally constructed to be in the new Batman animated adventure, but they took his traits and merged it with Tim Drake. They tend to do that a lot with Robin, is make him like a composite character. Like his name is Robin, so he could be anybody. so so you're trying to figure out which Robin it is, and it doesn't really matter that much. So it's very unfortunate that they do that, but I don't know. It was dumb. When they did that Teen Titans TV show, the live action TV show, didn't they have Dick Grayson absorb some of the Jason Todd character arc, which is not Dick Grayson at all. You know, it's dumb. Like you could definitely do a Batman trilogy just with him and Robin. You could do a Batman and Robin trilogy with Batman with Dick Grayson first, and then Batman with Jason Todd in the second movie, and he gets killed, and then a third Batman movie which features Tim Drake and the return of Jason Todd as Red Hood. You could tell that story. Um, Letha Elsie has a question. Do you subscribe to the postmodern argument that there is no more original stories, so the only option is to deconstruct stories? No, I don't. Look, even a deconstruction is not original. Like that's the thing. You can deconstruct shit all day. That's not original. It takes almost no talent to deconstruct things. You know, yes, a lot of stories have been told, and they've been told in very unique and different ways, but that's the thing. You write a story that about a guy saving a girl. If you write that story, guy saves girl. Okay, are you talking about Super Mario Brothers? Are you talking about Legend of Zelda? Are you talking about Taken? Are you talking about Sound of Freedom? All of those are different. Are you talking about Man on Fire? All those are different stories where man saves girl. It could be her bodyguard. It could be a knight saving a princess. It could be a father saving a daughter. It could be a father saving his wife, a husband saving his wife. It could be 100 different ways of writing that same story. And each person can do it in their own individual way, their own individual style. So, no, I don't, because if you strip everything down to its most bare bones, every story has been told, sure. But the thing is, we recognize that this plot has been done before, but how are you going to do this plot differently? And sometimes these plots are taken in different directions. Sometimes guy saves girl in space. Sometimes guy saves girl across time. Sometimes guy saves girl in a fantasy world. Sometimes guy saves girl in the hood. Sometimes guy saves girl and it's a horror movie. That's where you are allowed to do different things. There is almost never any real excuse to deconstruct stories unless you really, really want to. And you can still deconstruct things and it can be good. It's just most people are not good at it. Most people are just no good at deconstructing stories. They just kind of fall into tropes, or they just try to make things as edgy as possible and try to be smarter than the audience and smarter than everybody else in the room, and you overthink things. And that ends up really destroying what you were trying to do in the first place. I've spoken on the Hollywood strike quite a few times. I really saw a guy make the argument that, you know, this thing is about, look, it's all about entitlement. People who think they're entitled to things. You know, they want residuals, they want royalties, all this kind of stuff, but they don't write quality stuff. These companies are losing billions of dollars even before they went on strike. Netflix was losing money, you know, Apple TV, everybody who's losing money on streaming services because the writers who are dominating Hollywood are not writing good material. They're writing their political crap. Everybody knows it, everybody sees it. The actors are even verbalizing it, and people are turning away from it. And so they think that they are owed something, when in reality, nobody wants to consume their product, but we can't get rid of them. And this ends up being the the standoff. Is like, how do you can't get rid of these people, you know? Like they're not writing the best material that they can write, even in adopting somebody else's very popular material like Resident Evil or Twisted Metal or something like that. They still can't get it right. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you know, I guess Power Rangers coming up, they're about to try to, write that into the ground. They still can't do it correctly, even with a blueprint. So it's obvious that these people are not talented. We should be able to get rid of them, but we can't. So it's pretty dumb to me, that they're asking for more at the same time producing worse material than they've ever produced before, you know? So I see why the streaming companies and nobody's buckled yet. It's like you've been killing our business by writing garbage. You've been writing garbage for years now. If we're going to lose money, we might as well lose money with you not working and you lose money too, rather than we lose money and you keep raking in the dough because we have to hire these people. It's like, no, just go ahead and break the fucking union and get better writers. WG Field says realistically, the new Batman will probably be in his early 30s, considering you'll probably want him to star in two trilogies, the Solo and Justice League, kind of like they want from Tom Holland. Yeah, so now we're talking about maybe a mid 40s Batman when you get to Damian, which is fine, I guess, because you're talking about at least 10 years, not knowing how long you want Jason Todd to be around, but or Tim Drake. I guess you could skip Tim if you wanted to, you know. But I don't know. WG Phil has another statement. I'm not sure why people are mad at $25 for streaming, considering they probably get paid millions up front from the studio. It's a issue, and I was thinking about this when I was in the comic book shop. It's an issue that these people want share of profits, quote unquote. They don't want to share the risk. And that's always the case is unions want to try to force people into profit sharing, but they don't want to share any of the risk. You know, you want money up front and money on the back end, but if it loses money, you don't want it to affect you at all. So they basically just want to turn the companies into an ATM where they can just keep plugging in, punching numbers and getting money out. They don't ever have to put anything in it. They don't have to put any risk in it. And that's not a way to run a business. You know, the people who run businesses are not going to allow you to do that. You know, it's literally their job to make sure that the business operates on a level where it can make profits, and they take a tremendous amount of risk. You as a writer, you take no risk. Let's say you don't write. Well, then guess what? You go get another job. But these people are trying to produce content. They're trying to produce multi-million dollars of content. They're the ones paying the actors. They're the ones paying for the marketing and the directors and all this kind of stuff. The writers aren't. Why should they get anything on the back end? You did your part. You sat here and you wrote the TV show. Okay, that's what you were paid to do. Why should you get anything more than that? I don't see any good reason why you should get anything more than that. Why should you get paid more if you did not do an exceptional amount of work? You did one job, you got one paycheck for your one job. Okay, fine. End of story, Or you got you got paid up to the completion of that job. and then that's it. What more is there that need to be done if we're being honest? It seems silly to me that we're doing that. Leeds LG says, to play devil's advocate, I'm not a fan of many old shows, but the talent that worked on those shows still receives royalties when they air as reruns. Today's talent wants something similar. I understand that, but that old TV show, that old that old syndication model no longer exists. All right. If that model existed, I would agree with you. If it was still 400 TV channels and Twisted Metal was now going into syndication, I would say, yeah, get these people, because the reason why they will be getting royalties, and I think we've talked about this before in terms of unions, is they were getting points per unit. In other words, all the writers and the artists, the actors and whatever, they were getting royalties when the media was being turned from one thing to another. So that means they got paid when it was first run. And then they would get paid again if it became syndicated. That would be the incentive to write a good show so that your show could get to a certain number of episodes. So now that your show is a good show that gets to a certain number of episodes, now you can live off the work that you've done if it ever gets canceled or the show comes to a natural conclusion. You had an incentive there. You had an incentive to make a good show because now also you want to be able to sell DVDs, videotapes, something like that. Your incentive was still there to write good television, because if you write a good TV show that people want to watch, they'll watch it on DVD, they'll watch it on syndication, and then you can continue to get paid. But now these shows do not go into syndication. These shows are uploaded all at pretty much all at one time on Netflix or Apple TV or whatever, and there's no reruns. It's not a rerun for people to play the episode. It's the same format that it was in before. Now, if they, like, I've seen episodes of like I have Daredevil season 2 on DVD. I would imagine the actors and writers who participated on that show got some kind of residual from writing and producing Daredevil season 2 because it entered into a DVD format. But I wouldn't expect that for a movie that is not leaving Netflix. You know, I don't expect that for a TV show that is on Peacock and it won't be anywhere else. Now, if you wanted to say, hey, it started as a Peacock original, but now it's going to be on USA Network, then we should get paid for that, then I will agree with you. Because that would be taking your work and putting it into a different medium, which means it's not the medium that you intended to make it in. If you intended to make the medium, intended to make the work for a medium, knowing that this medium is static, then you shouldn't get anything extra. Sorry, but your TV has changed. Syndication no longer exists. And I know there are a lot of actors and people like that have complained, but they've found a way to make up for that by making more money up front, which is what, when I read the SAG-AFTRA website about a little over a year ago, probably, that's how they chose to handle the situation. They chose to pay actors more upfront because the actor will not be getting residuals because the movie will not be moved from one medium to another. So the actors would get paid more upfront. The same thing happened with wrestlers. A lot more wrestlers when the Peacock sorry, not with Peacock, but when the network happened, guys started getting lump sums up front because they're not making the same amount of money on DVD sales anymore because people don't buy DVDs anymore. And people have to accept that. Now, I know that sometimes there's a limited run of DVDs released on a TV show or whatever that came out on Netflix, and that's probably not going to be enough to really make a change. But I don't see why you should get royalties because, look, let's say that they do. Let's say that they get royalties on a TV show, for a TV show getting clicks. Okay, that increases their their incentive on the show, sure, to make a better show. But at the same time, it increases the costs to the streaming service, and they're already losing money. So now you're putting them in a position where again they're going to lose more money. You know, it's it's an unfair scenario where the people who have to pay for everything are now going to be paying for the same product two or three times. It's like, no. The reason why it changed, why it was working before, because it was a different product. A TV, a DVD product, different from a TV product, different from a cable product, different from a streaming product. All of these products are different. Um, but saying that people should be forced to pay to continue watching something that you know uh, is available all day really doesn't make much sense. And it seems to me like they're just trying to fleece these companies because they know that they got the money, but they also know that it costs money to make these shows because all of these unions are essentially fleecing the companies by overpaying a lot of these writers and directors and talents for a product that is not very good. If we're being honest, they don't make good product. You don't make a good product, you're gonna have trouble making money. I guarantee you, if you're a good writer, you don't have a problem finding a job, and you don't care about this shit. You know, you care about this shit because you mid, or because you're low quality, you're low talent, you're low skill level. All right, so that was TMNT. Let's talk about Power Rangers Time Force now. So WG Field suggested I watch Power Rangers Time Force, which is a 20-year-old Power Ranger series I never heard of until he told me about it. And I started watching it because the plot sounded interesting. So the plot is serious. There's a guy named Alex. He's the Red Ranger. He's fighting an escaped criminal named Rancic. He ends up getting killed. His girlfriend is named Jen. She's the Pink Ranger. She follows Rancic back into time where Rancic has now kidnapped all of these, well, I guess you could say he's freeing all of these mutants from the future in the past to create a crime spree of sorts. And the Power Rangers, of course, you get the regular Power Ranger trope of, villain of the day. They beat the villain, then they capture them, that kind of stuff. So I thought it was a really simple, interesting plot. The thing about Power Rangers is that they all are blandly competent most of the time. They don't really have great characters. They're all just kind of, I don't want to say aspirational heroes because sometimes they do have to go through things, but they're all just generally good people out to help others. And there's no real moral quandaries into the stuff that they do. But it's a television show for children. So that's at one point where you have to realize, okay, we're talking about a TV show for kids. So you don't want to get too deeply philosophical on it. So I think from there, it was actually a pretty good show. Typical of Power Rangers as well is terrible acting. The acting is no good. Misplaced comedy, I think. Sometimes they undercut serious stuff with jokes, which is a typical modern Marvel comics thing now, where they get so addicted to comedy or they so attached to children they think children can't handle serious situations. Um, Power Rangers almost always has decent to good action, but it has you can tell that it suffers from the same thing WWE suffers from. I think it's probably got it from Power Rangers is the shaky camera, where now this is just a general action movie thing now, where the cameras start to shake too much to simulate the power of the fight and all this kind of stuff. So the camera is just constantly moving around. CGI is pretty decent. It's not awful. Everything looks like a toy, which is another Power Rangers trope. Is everything looks like an action figure. Everything, which is sort of the point. You want kids to buy the action figures, so everything looks like a toy, but it's fine. So I like the villains on Power Rangers Time Force. Rancic is an evil bastard. I really liked how evil he was. He looked a lot like Kano from Mortal Kombat. Like half of his face is metallic and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. I hated the ending. Didn't really like the ending too much. At the end of the 40 episode Odyssey, where you kind of want to see Rancid get his. They cop out on you by having him just surrender, which I was like, fuck you. Fuck you. He surrendered. That sucks. Um, there was another situation where time travel. They tell you not to go back in the past and change time. The heroes, well, we know better. We're going to go back in time and change the past anyway. And again, once again, there's no consequences to their actions. So you have these characters who were told, hey, you know, you can't do X, Y, and Z in the past because it'll affect the future. Things will change. And then they do it anyway. And you don't see any major changes occur, you know? And which is why I think, generally speaking, time travel is one of the worst plots that you can do. I really hate time travel plots because if you set it up that if you change things in the past, you change the future, and then nothing changes when you have villains rampaging throughout the town, kicking over buildings and shit. Okay, then I'm pretty sure hundreds of people just died. How did that change the future? It didn't. Oh, okay. So we're in an infinite loop now where that's supposed to happen. And then you get the situation where I also did not like that Alex ended up being alive later. Ended up being like some kind of other Time Force Ranger or whatever the fuck, which is mm, I was like, I mean, it's a children's show, so clearly they weren't going to overdo it. But I like deaths that stick, especially when it's the main motivation of one of the characters, and that was a big motivation for the Pink Ranger is the death of Alex. And then you get Alex back, and he's a jerk, which of course the point of that was to make West seem like he's a cooler Red Ranger, so that you wouldn't turn your back on West to be Team Alex, especially since there's a love triangle that they're utilizing here. As you know, Jen is starting now to catch feelings for West, but he lives in the past. It's like okay, okie dokie, because I was wondering how he was going to deal with that situation. uh, Most of the characters are just blindly competent. I have to be honest. I was kind of surprised that they had Katie, who was a Yellow Ranger, as a black girl. They never once mentioned that she was black. It never came up. They even sent her back into the past, where she was in like in the Victorian era or something like that, and she was helping this guy who was being bullied. Not one time did it mentioned that she was black, which seems kind of like they for starters they also didn't mention how she was dressed. Like she was clearly not dressed from that era. She looked like she was on a safari or something like that. And her not being like, I was, of course, cringing at the idea because I'm so used to modern stuff. I cringed at the idea of a black woman being sent in the past with a bunch of stuffy, almost Victorian British people. But it never came up that she was black. And they also never mentioned that she dressed weird. But that was interesting. That whatever. She was blandly competent. I think she was very underdeveloped. I think there was something maybe there with Katie that they didn't really develop. Same thing with the Blue Ranger. He's supposed to be like he wasn't quite the bad boy. You know, he wasn't really that guy, but he was sort of the what normally the Red Ranger would be. You know, but he's also kind of the smart guy too, kind of. But he was also very blandly competent. Um, Not much jumped out at me. I hated the Green Ranger. He was an idiot. That seems to be a new thing with Power Rangers, where the Green Ranger is a fucking moron. He was an alien who could apparently read minds, but never read a mind when it mattered. So that was like that was very frustrating. That they introduced the whole mind reading aspect, and then they never used it in any effective way that might actually matter. You know, so it was that was weird. I didn't like it. I don't like the Green Ranger. I also don't like the Green Ranger in RPM. He sucks too. But we'll talk about that next week. I'm pretty sure I'll be finished with the series by then. Um, what else? I like some of the plots, especially the villain plots. For instance, the fact that Rancic had gotten bitten by another mutant and he needed regular intervals of this serum in order to prevent his body from going into like convulsions or whatever. I thought that was very interesting because it shows how evil and dark he is, that he even gets into it with other villains. And it also, I like the idea of him in the robot doctor. That was my favorite. That, he ended up being saved by this robot doctor after he got bit. And but he was such a rotten bastard that he turned on the robot on the doctor and ended up killing him, or destroying him. I destroyed you. But the doctor saved himself by turning himself into a robot, and then he ended up being sort of a mad scientist. And he ended up working for Rancic, and Rancic never knew that this guy was the doctor that he had killed before. And then the guy kind of goes, rogue on Rancic. I really like that. That to me was the best arc of the show, you know, because and I found out that it's another one of those tropes with TMNT where they kind of, I mean, I'm sorry, not TMNT, but Power Rangers, where the villains end up becoming so villainous that they split. The villains have their own agendas, and I think that that was very fucking cool, and I like that. That that character existed. Um, David, you feel asked me about the Quantum Ranger. Uh, it was okay. I never really, I don't, maybe I didn't pay attention. I didn't get what his problem was. Like, he seemed to be a real pain in the ass, but I didn't really understand why. You know, like he's kind of this brooding character, but it's like he's alone. He doesn't have any friends, and it's like, well, that's why he's an asshole because he doesn't have any friends. So it's kind of like it's a horrible cycle. It's like, okay, are you an asshole so you don't have any friends, or you don't have any friends and that makes you an asshole? I don't know, but I was cool with the arc of a guy who don't like Wes, giving the power of the Power Rangers to Wes's dad, who was actually a very good villain too. And I like his redemption arc was kind of short, I think, but I think it was very well done. Where and it's a classic. The villain comes in contact with somebody worse than he is. Of course, they copped out and he ended up surviving too. But ends up happening is Wes's dad is this evil billionaire Lex Luthor type who finds out about they use his bio lab to create this serum that saves people from this virus that Rancic's got. Then Rancic releases the mutant that gave him the virus, and then other people start to get it. So now they have to mass produce the serum, and so they use Wes's father to mass produce the serum because he uses it as an opportunity to make tons of money. So then the robot reveals himself to be Rancic's enemy. He destroys all of Rancic's serum. Rancic thinks he's gonna die because he doesn't have any serum. Then he finds out that the humans have it. So then he invades Wes's father's biolab, and he ends up confronting Wes's dad about this. And they have this conversation where Wes's dad stands up for Wes and says, like, look, I've always been proud of my son, yada yada yada. And then he gets cut down by Rancic. I like that. I thought that was a great, finally this guy he got his comeuppance as a villain, that he was confronted by even bigger evil and he was cut down. I don't like that he survived. Like, I just don't like that he lived. It was I guess he lived because he had to be able to verbally say to Wes that he's sorry and all this kind of stuff. But no, he should have died. He should have died and been dead. That's just me. I'm one of those guys, man. I feel like he should have been killed and he should have been dead, but he lived. Okie dokie, whatever. I don't care. But I thought that was a really good plot too. The Nadira plot, where she is the most human of the villains, and she goes on capers where she's stealing diamonds and she's doing all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, at one point, she decides, why do we hate humans so much, us mutants? And then she starts getting soft. Like, it'd have been one thing if she'd been introduced to the doctor to see how evil her father is and why this guy is undermining him and all this kind of stuff. And I think her character arc really kind of turned when she apologized to the doctor and said, "I'm sorry about what my father did to you." Oh, that was good. Um, because she was now introduced to something that she felt was wrong, something that was really wrong, not, taking stuff from people, but honestly, killing somebody for no reason who did nothing to you, who was, it wasn't like you wanted something that he had either. It was just pure evil, and in the face of pure evil, she turned too. And that's really what typically you get from people who are sort of bad guys, is typically they are confronted with an even greater evil, and then they turn around and they do more, um, or they change their ways. And that's typically what you see in like Sons of Anarchy or Breaking Bad or The Wire or those kind of shows where all these characters are badasses who are all about murdering and killing, and then they come across a character who's even worse than they are, and then they don't seem so bad anymore, like The Sopranos and stuff. And so utilizing that trope and like but using it to do a redemption arc is fine to me. I don't hate it. I just don't think that Rancic should have been redeemed in the end. I think he should have been killed off. To me, to go through all of the stuff that he went through, all the destruction, all the people that he killed, and all the chaos that he caused, for him to just be able to give up and say, "Oh well, put me back in a frozen pit or whatever the fuck I come from." I was like, "That's a cop out. That's bullshit." Um, WG Field says in the Japanese version, the doctor was a special ed person who became smart and went deranged. Oh wow, wow, that's kind of nutty. Leith Elsie says, "Are you sick of the wisecracking or overly quippy hero? As a kid, it seemed like mainly Spider-Man was that type of hero. Now every hero has the power to make tension-killing one-liners." Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it personally. Um, Spider-Man seems to have created that trend in comic books and TV shows. I think Guardians of the Galaxy did a great deal of damage to the universe when it comes to that stuff too. So I really wish it had not taken hold. I can't stand it. You gotta you gotta let things sit. Characters need to be different. Everybody can't be Spider-Man, you know. But it's a copycat business. It's a copycat world. You know, if it works for one, everybody ends up trying to do it, and now everybody's just kind of borrowing things from Spider-Man, and it sucks. It really sucks. So I think that for the most part, it was a good series. It got me interested in watching Power Rangers more. So that's why I ended up watching Power Rangers RPM, uh, because I was like, man, it's easy to watch. You don't have to put a lot of thought into Power Rangers. It's simple, good versus evil. They go into the backstories of the characters. Sometimes the backstories of the characters are interesting. Sometimes they aren't. Um, Time Force did not do a really good job in terms of the back force of some of those characters. I feel like a lot of them were very underdeveloped, especially the Green Ranger. Like he's an alien with the ability to read minds, but I don't remember what planet he came from, how he's living on Earth. Again, he never uses his mind reading for anything that matters. It probably could have been better written in terms of that character because he felt like a completely pointless character to me. I guess he was sort of the naive good guy though. He's so good that he's able to be deceived because they had the whole thing when he was deceived by Nadira and everything. But whatever. Um, I thought it was good overall though. But that's a turn your brain off and just enjoy it kind of good, where you don't have to overthink it. So that was fine. I liked it. I would suggest people watch it if you like uh, Power Rangers. I would suggest Time Force. It's a good show. Um, Quantum Ranger was okay. Uh, it was all right. It was a fun show. let's talk about 91 Days. 91 Days is an anime series. Now, uh, on Twitter, there was a discussion about anime series that were great that were under 20 episodes or something like that. So a lot of people talked about various shows that were like 12, 15, 20 on the dot. And one of them was 91 Days. And I think I watched this before, I just didn't remember it. But then I watched it again. I was like, I don't remember this at all, so I probably never watched it. I did watch Erased, and I watched that more than once. I think that's under 20 episodes too. That's a fantastic show. You should watch it. But 91 Days is pretty good too. All right, so 91 Days is it's a mafia show. It's about a kid who watched his entire family get killed by the mafia. And so he grows up to infiltrate that mafia organization that killed his family. And I didn't really like the ending, but it was a fun show because he ends up creating all kinds of schisms in between the mafia organization and other mafia organizations. He ends up creating a civil war within the organization that he's infiltrated. It's a it's a very fun show. It's a lot like Godfather 2. Like if you've seen the episode of the movie Godfather 2, where Vito um, goes back to, I believe it was Sicily, and kills the old Don Ciccio, stabs him and whatever under the pretense of having a business deal for him. It's similar thing here where there's four or five people who was involved with the murder of his family, and he was a little kid when it happens. His father was shot and killed. His mom was too, and so was his little brother. And he was watching from the closet, so he was very traumatized. So he escapes, and he goes and grows up in a different town, comes back, and sort of infiltrates this organization. Now, it's set in the 1920s and so to give you like excellent mafia vibes, it's about bootlegging. That's the number one thing is moonshine and that kind of stuff. And he infiltrates this organization, this mafia, and he's slowly but surely getting revenge on everybody who is involved with the death of his family. But at the same time, it kind of have a little bit of a Donnie Brasco uh, aspect to it. That one of his targets actually becomes a good friend of his, as that's the guy who brought him in, you know, and that creates this sort of tension where you get to watch the character have some kind of regret. You also get the main character who has to make the decision whether he's going to kill his new friend or not, because his friend was a younger man, but he wasn't a child when it happened. He made a decision to aid in the murder of the kid's family, but now he's kind of like an adult, and there's a little bits of regret there. He wish he hadn't done it, or he wish it wasn't necessary, or whatever the case may be, and that creates a lot of drama too. So it's a very good show, very solid animation, really good plot, revenge plot. Um, I can't tell too much without telling the ending. I think the show was pretty old, but I think if I told the ending, nobody would watch it because I know once I saw the ending, I didn't want to watch it anymore. But it ended. I wouldn't say it ended definitively, but it was pretty clear what occurred at the end. Um, but if you like revenge stories, this was a pretty good one. And it's again the Japanese writing about uh, the Western world, so there's a lot of gunplay and a lot of shootings, and it's pretty fun. It's a pretty fun show. I highly suggest 91 Days. All right, the fourth topic we got today is Hell's Paradise, the manga series. W RAS, are you still here? What episode? Have you finished episode 12 for starters? If so, tell me where you are, and I'll be able to stop without giving away the ending to the show. But the overall plot of Hell's Paradise is simple. Various killers from around the Japanese area is rounded up, and they're given the mission to go find the elixir of life on a mysterious island. And they're each given a bodyguard or a samurai that is to execute them if they try to escape, or execute them if they attempt to in any way attack somebody else or anything like that. And the story is based around this character named Gabumaru the Haro, and he's the number one ninja of the Iwagakure uh, clan, and he was arrested for being a traitor or something to that effect. And they've been trying to execute him, and he's been claiming he wants to die, but then he figures out that he really does want to live. He's got something to live for because he loves his wife, and that's really what hooked me in. Is this guy who is, he's lying to himself about, the fact that he wants to die, that he has nothing to live for, but in reality, he just loves his wife, you know, and I thought that was very touching. It's very sentimental, and he ends up being paired up with an executioner who feels amounts of doubt and fear in her executions, because for her, even though she's trained to do this, it's just not normal for her to cut people's heads off, you know. And they get to this island, and it becomes a free for all, a brouhaha. The central thing once they get to the island, it becomes about Tao, Tao, which is pronounced Dao in China. It is about, of course, the yin and the yang, the I Ching, and basically you start learning about Tao, which is like fire, metal, wood, water, earth, and each person has their own Tao. And like rock, paper, scissors, this Tao affects this Tao differently. This person is weak against this person because of this kind of Tao, and that kind of stuff. But it's based a lot on the old Chinese I Ching, which is the yin and the yang. You've ever seen the big circle with the black side and the white side, and the white dot on the black side, and the black dot on the white side. So it basically all the characters are built that same way. It's all about balance, strengths and weaknesses, and characters learning how to balance their Tao and all that kind of stuff in order to defeat various enemies. Um, but if you actually like read the story, you'll get it that some characters are Yangs, which are masculine characters, but they have a bit of Yin in them, which is the white dot on the black side. Or they'll have female characters that have the black dot, so feminine characters that have a dark side or whatever. So for Gabumaru, he's a masculine character, but he loves his wife. So he has very feminine, soft feelings for his wife and for relationships in general, as you learn throughout the series that he um, actually reacts to the villains being married. You know, he has a real reaction to that because to him that means something. That bond matters. And there's other ones that characters are impressed by other characters' honor, their inquisitive nature, their curiosity, their intelligence, or whatever. So each character is finding other reasons to bond through this horrible scenario where they're trapped on this putrid island where everything can turn you into a flower beast. And but the island itself is pretty gnarly. So it's run by these creatures. They're called hermits. They're called Tensen technically, but they're basically hermits. They're trying to harvest the Tao of humanity to create um, the elixir of life. Or later on, you'll learn that there's an ultimate uh, victory to be had for one of the Tencent. And then you figure out that the Tencent are not all they cracked up to be, but they're incredibly vicious monsters. They take human form, but they can flip between male and female. So you get a lot of that old them they stuff in the manga, but it actually makes sense because the characters constantly flip between male and female because that's part of their how they work their Dao, which is their power set. You know, like Key in Dragon Ball, your Dao is that you constantly go from male to female. They have their each one of them are tasked with studying how to replenish their Dao. So then you have a hermit that studies fighting. You have a hermit that studies uh, breathing techniques, a hermit that studies sex, a hermit, that kind of thing. And it's very, very interesting, you know. And then they become very, very difficult to defeat. They can only be beaten in a very certain way. And it's a fun show. I watched like the first 3 episodes of the anime. It's another Mappa production. There's a hella Mappa productions out there now. But it's cool. I've been watching the English dub. The English dub could probably use some work, but it's not too bad. Um, things get lit later on. Um, like it's I do think that it suffers from again deaths that don't stick, characters that are revived, Deus Ex Machina kind of ridiculousness near the end. I was not feeling that, but at least they tried to explain it. To me, it's like they over explained it, and I didn't want to have to study the power set of this damn book. So I just took it. I just took it in stride. I was kind of like, okay, I didn't know they could do that, but I don't understand Dao anyway, even though you just told me about it. So it is what it is. Just take it in stride, man. But the fight scenes are really good. The characters are badasses for the most part. They also have it's typical of Japanese anime. The characters have weird quirks, or you have one of the samurai who likes to disembowel and disembody things because not because he's vicious or violent, but because he's inquisitive. And he wants to know how things work. And so his one of his jobs is that he steals bodies and cuts them up to make medicine. And so he's sort of the first aid guy. He's a bit of a weirdo, very off to himself, and I really like that character. I think he's pretty cool. Um, there's a Kunoichi there. She's a typical seductress, out for herself, always looking to backstab everybody. She's a fun character too. But the real no nonsense people come in later on, and things get interesting. That's where we get the character named Mugen, who is nuts. He's nuts. Where he slaughters. He's supposed to be like this guy who is of the utmost honor and respect in terms of a samurai, but he'll kill innocent children and stuff. And people understand why he did that, which again is the whole he is the yang with the yin inside of him, where he cries over the death of his friends and death of others, but he's also completely and totally relentless and vicious. So I don't want to give too much away, but it's a really good manga series. So far, the anime's been pretty solid. Can't complain. So that's about it. That's all I got. Um, Next week we'll probably talk about Power Rangers RPM. I'm probably going to finish No Guns Life, the manga series. So we'll talk about that probably. I'm almost done with that. Try to find some movie to watch, and maybe we'll talk about that movie. But that's all I got, you guys. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.